Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Shackleton with the Ontario Museum Association. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I am a late 20s male with brown hair, sitting here at my desk at the OMA office, wearing a brightly colored flowered shirt this morning, and I use he, him pronouns. As an organization of provincial scope, the Ontario Museum Association recognizes that its members and communities live and work on the lands and territories of Indigenous peoples. We are thankful to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to all communities across the province. We acknowledge that there are more than 40 treaties and other land agreements that cover Ontario, that the descendants and cultures of the first peoples who lived here are a vibrant and integral part of our society today. We gratefully acknowledge and deeply value the opportunity we have to learn from and cherish the contributions of Indigenous peoples of the past, present, and into the future. As we acknowledge the colonial legacy of museums, we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. As you participate in this gathering, we invite you to reflect on the land that you are on, who the traditional keepers of the land are, what the treaty relationship is, or if it is unceded territory. Toronto, where the OMA offices are located, is the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement and is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this morning. I want to make sure everybody is able to participate with us as we go through our webinar. You should be able to see the slides and you'll be able to hear and see our speaker. If you'd like to ask a question of our speaker, you can use the Q&A feature that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd like to say hello to your colleagues on the call, you can chat with them using the chat feature, also at the bottom of your screen. And while you're down there at the bottom of your screen, you can actually turn on automated closed captions. And we'll actually have some OMA staff members monitoring the chat who can help you with any technical questions that you might have. So that covers my introductions to getting everybody ready to participate. And so I'm going to introduce Sinead Cox from the Huron County Museum and Historic Jail. So Sinead has worked with the Huron County Museum and Historic Jail since 2011, starting as a volunteer and student. As the Curator of Engagement and Dialogue, she coordinates community partnerships, public programs, events, outreach, and student staffing. Sinead majored in History and English Literature at the University of Western Ontario and did a year abroad at the University of Leeds in the UK, and received her master's degree in Public History from Carleton University. She also co-directed and co-founded Staging Our Histories, a project that shared history through live performance. Good morning, Sinead. Are you ready for us? I'll stop my share and I'll let you take it away.
Sure, I am ready.
Go ahead.
So, good morning, everybody. So I am zooming in from Goderich this morning, which is treaty number 29 and 45.5 territory. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a program we have been doing. And I had to look this up since I think December 2017, which is the Dads and Kids or Dads and Male Caregivers Nights at the museum. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the program started, our partnership with Rural Response for Healthy Children, how we've shifted during COVID, trying to not use the very irritating word pivot, to virtual and then a mix of virtual and on-site. So I will do a quick presentation on how the program came to be and the kind of things we've done, and then I am happy to answer questions during and after. Just a little bit of context on our sites. So we are run by the County of Huron. So we're municipal, and we run two separate sites that are about a 5-minute walk apart from each other in Goderich. The Huron County Museum, which is a community museum, which is located in the former Central School with an addition that is purpose-built where our storage and offices and our other exhibit space is, and the Huron Historic Jail, which is a National Historic Site and was the jail for the Huron district from 1841 till 1972. So two very unique and cool spaces to do programming in. The County of Huron is a geographically large rural county. And you can see that we're here in Goderich. We're not exactly centrally located. So that is one of our big challenges, is reaching our community in a very large area that does not have public transportation or always easy ways for people to get to the museum. So we were approached back in 2017 for a partnership by Rural Response for Healthy Children, which is a local nonprofit. And so their mandate really looks at preventing child abuse and supporting families, both by targeting particularly at-risk families and just the general wider community, and providing services and supports and education for children. So they have several parental focused programs. They have, I think they've done like yoga and walk and talks and moms groups, and they wanted to do something specifically for male caregivers and dads. And that also includes like grandfathers, stepfathers, anyone who is masculine and identifying and providing care for kids. So inviting male caregivers it was something that Rural Response came to us because they weren't seeing that group represented at the events and programs they were having that are aimed at all parents. And so they found that they actually had to go out and invite dads to participate to see that level of uptake. And so it turned out to be like more inclusive, and to see more of those male caregivers to directly have events that were for them, inviting them, that they felt comfortable then signing up for. So the registration is handled by Rural Response, and so they started promoting, and then the first night we had was back in December 2017, was sort of like a large open house where we had a really great attendance and uptake, and proving that there was interest for male caregivers to go and do programming with their kids, but they may need to be invited directly versus feeling comfortable coming to the parental programs that tended to be dominated by female caregivers. So Rural Response came to us, and we said, yeah, we can do programming at the museum and at the jail. And so Rural Response handles the registration, and they also have had different funders over the years for food. So the kids and their male caregivers get a meal. They get a welcome with Rural Response often does an icebreaker just to get everyone's name tags on and to greet with the group. And then we will do an activity or a challenge. In the past, when we were always on site, we often started with sort of an open-ended hunt or activity that kids and their parents could do in the space as they were arriving. Then we'd have the meal, then we'd have the activity or the challenge or the craft or whatever we were doing together. And that has been pretty much the format since 2017 to 2023. And I've been with the program more or less the whole time. I had a colleague who did some of the virtual programs during COVID while I was filling in another position. And he did a great job. But mostly some of the liaisons at Rural Response have changed, but I've been with the program since the beginning. So it's been really exciting to see a lot of returning families week after week, month after month. And so we do the fourth Thursday of the month for consistency, and we do the fall, spring, winter, and then we take a break in July and August for the summer. Sometimes Rural Response has had interest in doing those summer months, but because of the staffing, that it's not really doable for us right now. But we might expand, and also our local community, because we are a tourist community. You can see Goddard is located on the lake there. The off season tends to be the time when we see our local community coming back again for special programs, and July and August tends to be the heavy tourist season, and our local people are also traveling out, and soccer and all of that stuff is happening. So we usually take a break in July and August. the rural response, then we have an agreement, memorandum of understanding with them as the part of the partnership. So they provide, like I mentioned, the registration and the food. We provide the programming and activities and the space, and we have a understanding with them, and then they pay like our minimum program fee per month, and then we invoice them at the end. And it's free for all of the participants, and the meals are free. So, so one of the challenges, of course, with that is coming up with a new custom program every single month, which is a lot of work because we have returning families, and so we have to come up with fresh programming. So we tie it in with temporary exhibits. I'll tie it in with things that are happening. It's always great to do like a Halloween tour or activity at the jail. Every year we have the Huron County Art Show, so we always do a kids and dads vote, and we put a ribbon on the art that the kids and the dads choose as their favorite art piece, and then usually do an art activity after that. So there's a lot of benefits to having to come up with new programs. Having that group every month is a great way to test. Activities that we've done with kids and dads have later been incorporated into our school programs, into our day camps. When we were switching to virtual programs, some of our virtual programs or pieces of them were first tested with the kids and dads group, because it's a great group because it's mixed ages. So we have everywhere from toddlers to tweens. That has its own challenges because you need to come up with activities that are good for a large range of ages, and that they can do with their dads, that encourages them to collaborate and work together. And so it's kind of a lovely challenge to come up with something every month that's gonna make them see and use the space in a new way. So often we start in a gallery or exhibit, talking about or doing an activity with the collection or with the space, and then we do something where we build something or make something or do an activity. And then in 2020, things changed a little bit, and Rural Response really thought that the program was needed more than ever, especially because of their mandate and the fact that families being locked down together was definitely leading to an increase in more risk because of the stress, because of the financial stresses, all of those stresses. Families are more at risk for stress and abuse than ever. And so that it was not a time where they could really step back from programming, but they had to think of new ways to do that programming. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a way that we could then bring our collection to people in their homes. And it was really, really surprising, like how well attended the virtual ones became. And it became a benefit in that people that were geographically far away from Goderich were able to participate more regularly. And we even had some families that were just on the edge or over the border in a different county start to participate. And we had a really regular group that were coming every month. And we even had a group that Zoomed in from their vacation in Disney, and they didn't miss Kids and Dads Night. Their connection from their motel was a little spotty. And in those groups, because it is a safe sort of space, and we want to, everyone would have their cameras on so you can see the kids could participate and share what they were working on and doing. And so it changed the kind of resources that we would employ too. So we started integrating things like Kahoots so they could interact, answer quizzes and trivia, and integrating document cameras so they could see items from the collection and see the kind of items that look really cool close up, but are not something that they could ever handle or even see very well in an exhibit case. So it was a great opportunity to show off different kinds of artifacts. and integrate the collection into that. And so Rural Response had funding for $70 gift cards for local restaurants. So because we couldn't provide the meal on site anymore, all of the participating families got a gift card that they can then use at local restaurants for a meal, takeout mostly in the early days of the pandemic. And Jill, who has been my liaison at Rural Response for the last 2 years, who's great, she actually, as part of the prep for every month, as part of registration, she would go out and send any handouts or materials to the families, actually drop them off or mail them. And so they would actually have materials in the house with them. So, so one of the things, I have a visual aid here, one of the things we made on a Kids and Dads group during shutdown was this paper plate fire helmet. So we did a presentation about fire brigades in Huron County and the different methods they use to fight fires. And we have a fire hall in our Main Street exhibit in the museum. So we looked at the virtual 360 tour for that space. And then they all had the paper plates. And this is an actual badge in our collection from one of the fire brigades that was attached to the air training bases. We had 4 during the Second World War in Huron County. So we talked about that and plane crashes and the need to fight fires in the training bases. And so they weren't just making any paper plate fire helmet, they're making one that had something from our collection on it. And I remember this because I had COVID while I was in my apartment making these paper plates. So it's a very vivid memory for me. I was exhausted. My boss dropped off into my apartment all of the paper plates so I could make the example for them that night. So so it was definitely different doing it virtually, but it was actually a really big success. And I think one of the most exciting virtual programs that we were able to do during COVID was continuing doing the Kids and Dads program. As I mentioned, it was again a way to test out new programs. So we did a virtual escape room using our 360 and a Google form, which was an Escape the Jail program, and we did it with the Dads and Kids group, and it went well, and they had a great time. And so then you're able to then use that program again and expand from that feedback. And they're a great group because they are mixed ages. And they have great questions and stuff because they're very comfortable. They were in their home spaces. And then you can also see another thing we did was Pictionary that used our virtual resources. So it's also pointing them to continue to use what we did have online so that they knew what we had available. So coming up with creative ways that they could do activities from home and access the collection from home. So coming back into 2022, 2023, we had such success with the virtual programs, and there was still some uncertainty with things being opened and then closed, open and then closed. And also in the winter months, travel is definitely a challenge in Huron County because we have a lot of lake effect snow. So we decided with Rural Response that we're going to try in person every other session. And so this worked really well in 2022, 2023. So we would be 1 month on site at either the museum or the jail, and then 1 month online. So we had a mixture of those 2 options, and there was definitely some families who were further away who were appreciating the online, and there were some families that were happy to get back on site. Also, the funding for the gift certificates for the restaurants ran out. And so we didn't have those options to give to people who were participating in the online, although there was funding for snacks and food for the on-site. And so we kind of thought, well, maybe that is the incentive and we're not going to have anybody for the online programs anymore. But that wasn't the case. We still had consistent regulars and new people joining all the time, which was great to see. see. But definitely there were some people who were excited to just to be on site and not to do any more virtual or to have any more screen time, which is definitely a concern with a lot of parents. So some of the things we did to mix it up. So these are like make do kits with like plastic screws and saws and screwdrivers so that you can make cardboard. And so we did a challenge where we first looked at the exhibits of some of the inventions and tinkering that our museum founder had done. And then we built armor or robot suits for the male caregivers. So their children would work together to make them a suit, which was really great. And then we had a virtual program where we looked at objects from the collection. We did a Kahoot where we tried to guess what mystery objects were. And then we had some slides where we had pieces of textiles, and the kids had to guess which part of an outfit didn't belong and actually belonged to another historical outfit. So we used, again, the collection to give them sort of a tour of storage virtually, which went over really well. And then the March, for example, we toured the part of our permanent exhibits that tells the story of the Great Storm of 1913 and the shipwrecks. And then we had a whole bunch of just craft supplies, and then each family unit built a boat together, and then we put it in a tub of water, and with a hairdryer, we created a storm and tested to see if their boats would stay afloat. So that's kind of thing where the multiple age range can participate, and where it encourages the male caregivers and the kids to interact as much as possible and problem solve together, and is a lot of fun. So those are really good programs this year. So this in 2023, this was our last on-site back in May, where we were at the jail. So we were doing an escape sort of scavenger hunt, and then we did an escape obstacle course out in the yard. And we have decided for going forward in 2023, 2024, we're going to be trying to go all back on site, since that seems to be what the regular families want. And so that will be starting back up in September. So that's exciting. Rural Response wants to continue. We want to continue. It's a great program, and I see a lot of the families, the kids and the dads coming to our other programs. I see them at open houses. I see them at like birthday parties when they're happening at the museum. So there's a strong connection with a lot of these families, which is really lovely to see. And with, local families, sometimes, you go once on a school field trip, and then you feel like you've been to the museum, you've been to the jail, you don't need to go back unless maybe you have out of town visitors. So showing something new from our collection every time, and also seeing these families from our communities, seeing what they're interested in and what we can create for them, I think gives new life to the collection and builds long-term connections between them and our sites as well, which is lovely, and just creates like wonderful memories between the families. I did not, stage this for them to write "I love Dad" on their robot suit. So it's a really great program. And I like the biggest challenges, I think, are again, because we're not completely centrally located, and we do it on Thursday nights because the museum is already open, so we already have some staff on site. So that is the best for our sites, so that we don't have to bring an extra staff or charge a rental fee for the space on Thursdays. So it is a school night, and some people in the county have further to drive, so providing that meal is also really important, because then it takes some of that stress out, because you don't have to like grab something to eat and get on the road. They can eat here, they can have that experience, and they're not stressed and rushed. And the other challenge is, like I mentioned, coming up with new programs every month, and taking inspiration from what's happening either seasonally or what our special exhibits are, or what's happening out in the community. Yeah, so that's my quick overview on how that the Kids and Dads program has been running, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. That's quite a scope of a program to have a new sort of activity every month for going on 6 years. That's incredible. So we have a couple of questions that have been submitted through the Q&A and a couple that came in registration in advance. So we'll go through questions. If anybody wants to start typing, there's the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen available to you, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can in the rest of our time together. So you talked about how you make a custom program every month for this group, new every month. As you go about conceptualizing and developing these programs, do you find that you make particular modifications or think about this group in a different way than you do kind of a general family group or sort of family programming in general, or like programming for kids specifically? Like, do you think that the male caregivers need a differently designed program than your other programs might be?
Yeah, I don't think so in terms of like, you know, we were doing dads versus moms. Like, I don't think it really in the programming itself, I don't think there's a big difference. I think it is a big difference when you have sort of drop off or drop in programming, because in this case, the parents are very involved. Like, they're there to spend time with their kids to take part in the program. So when you plan something, a craft or something, you want it to be more open-ended, that they can be creative, and I'm not as worried as much, like, oh, we're gonna have 24 kids and they're gonna have a breakdown if their, pinecone owl doesn't look like all the pinecone owls, because instead they're doing like, okay, we're gonna do handprints, your dad's handprint and your handprint, and now you have to turn them into like animals or shapes or something. And then it's like they're being creative and interacting together. So I think about that dynamic. And sometimes, when I'm looking at artifacts, I'm like, maybe we'll do sports. I'll stereotype. Dads love sports. We'll look at a hockey stick, or something like that. But no, not really. I think it's a similar dynamic than if you were working with mixed parents, but it's just an environment where they feel like low pressure to just come. And sometimes it is, again, to stereotype, sometimes it is the moms that register them and do the admin there, but it's the male caregivers that show up. So.
And speaking about that kind of environment of comfort, have you used different promotional channels or between you and your partners, like particular messaging, to help reach this kind of desired audience and make sure that they come in feeling comfortable and that they know it's a kind of a safe space to be a dad with their kids?
Yeah, I think a lot of like a social media, and I think in the early years, I think there was more posters, but during COVID and stuff, a lot of I think institutions have probably moved away from printing because there was nowhere to put printed materials, but definitely targeted sort of social media advertising. So Rural Response does their own registration and advertising, and then we also share their advertising on our website, our social media. And I really think it's as simple as just putting like dads, male caregivers right in there, so that they know that that's for them. And then they know that there's going to be other dads and male caregivers there, that they're not going to be the only one. And I think that it's as simple as just inviting directly, and that had success from the beginning.
Excellent. So we talked about some of this group has a lot of kind of return families. You've got some long relationships built there. Do you find that makes them really good to kind of test a new program on, or are they very good about giving you feedback, or are they kind of already museum experts? It makes it hard to know what a first-time visitor might do.
They're great because I think they're very comfortable. So like when when we're virtual, they're in their own home and they want to show you like what's like their pets and what they're drawing for like activities we're doing. They're comfortable, and they know me and they feel comfortable on site too. They're very comfortable with the space now with the museum and jail because they've been multiple times. And so yeah, so they'll ask questions, they'll point things out, and they are a great audience in that way, because you'll get an honest and a reaction from them. And because they're mixed ages, it's really great because you kind of see like, okay, this is great. We can make this work for a toddler and a tween, or like, oh, this is too young for maybe like 11 up. So, yeah, it's a greater challenge. And I think it's a challenge we rise to too, like when we get school groups that are from in town versus the rural. Sometimes, it's that people, when it's their first time ever at the museum, they're like, wow, they just have like, they've never been to a museum before as a kid. And like the train, we have a train inside, we have models that our founder made that you can touch, and they're amazed by that. And then the local kids, you have to add that something else. So that because they want to come back, something else to refresh the space, to make them see it in a new way, to point something out, to challenge them, because they don't have that novelty factor of just coming to the museum in itself is no longer an event. So it's actually good. It keeps us challenged to come up with new ways to get their attention. And they're a great group because they're sort of a captive audience. So for like something like the virtual escape room, we know we have that program coming up. So you can sometimes you develop a program, but you don't have like the right audience to test it with until it's a school group and they're like a safe, friendly audience, and they have their dads to help them. So that's the other thing. So you don't have to worry about making things too challenging for their age level as much, because they have their dads. And I like to encourage things that like, ask your dad about that afterwards, or begin conversation. So we were sharing the videos that a group we worked with made, local history videos, and there was one about the tornado in 2011. So it was like, does your dad remember that? Was he here? And sometimes they have a lot to contribute, and to leave that breathing room in the program too. This is a long ranting answer that went away from your question, but sorry.
Not to worry. Thinking of those kind of online programs, did you offer any kind of particular tech instructions or messaging to support them as they participated? Did this group need any sort of different supports than a school group did?
Yeah, so because they're with their parents, it was I know some, teachers who were like teaching during virtual classroom, and like the kids just there with an iPad, and but they had like their parent right there. So we always have them again turn on their camera and their audio so that they can participate. And so sometimes especially sometimes like grandfathers need some more direct just instruction. You can give that help them through that. And the first time we did a Kahoot, it was the kids do them in school, so they knew exactly what they were doing. But because, also when you're participating in Zoom, sometimes you're using your device that you would participate in. So knowing for the next time to be like, give them, okay, we're going to do a Kahoot. So if you want to participate, open another screen, or this is the link early, to give them some time to get into that. But it was because people are so used to Zoom and doing so many things on Zoom, and that was what we were using. It was pretty straightforward and easier for me, because the school boards were using Google Classroom and we're using Zoom. So that sometimes that would be where a lot of the tech issues would be coming in with, because everybody's using a different thing. But so there wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot, because a lot of what we were sending home again was the like hands-on stuff. There wasn't a lot that they had to do technically besides just join the Zoom link, which was nice.
Excellent. Thinking about your kind of on-site visits with kind of food and meals provided, have you ever integrated any sort of historic food programming into that? Or is that kind of outside the scope of this program to think about kind of like a historic cooking or historic food aspect?
Oh, definitely we definitely have, because we've had some food themed exhibits. So I think we've definitely done some integration. I would have loved to do, we have for like day camps before done like sushi making for kids. And I would love to do something like that for kids and dads if I had, but my contact that was doing that isn't local anymore. But I think that would be a great idea for a future kids and dads. Would be like a cooking class or session, since we definitely have a lot of historical recipes in our collection, and we have a lot of kitchen gadgets and stuff in our collection. So I don't know if we've done a specific one that's food based, but it's definitely, we're an agricultural county, so we've definitely done a lot that is agricultural themed too, and so it's definitely something that can tie into this pretty easily.
Excellent. Maybe it's just some more kind of bigger scale questions. How have you kind of assessed and measured the success of the program, and what kind of you do use as your metrics to report back to your partners and things?
Yeah, so attendance, of course, and it's varied over the years, for sure, but it's more consistency too. Is that we're seeing families come back, that they're getting something out of it, and that they are registering, and so they some of that goes to rural response, like any feedback they have or suggestions, and because families have come back and back, they do feel comfortable like telling Jill like, oh, we'd rather be on site or we'd rather do online, and she hears some of that, which is nice just conversationally. But we report the attendance, and it's like I said, during COVID it was really high, and it continues to be pretty steady. And so that if people keep coming, build and they will come. If they keep coming and we keep hearing positive feedback, then that to me is a successful program. And it's like the little anecdotal things that are really hard to report, which is like seeing the interactions between the kids and the dads like pointing something out to the kids and all of that. I wish I could quantify that in a way that was like easy to report to council, but that's more just like gratifying for myself.
Maybe even anecdotally, have you seen that there's been kind of more or return visits of dads with their kids to the museum kind of outside of the program?
100%, yeah, because I recognize,
Mhm.
the kids and their parents, and they'll come back for open houses, and they'll come back for other special programs. I see them in field trips sometimes, and they'll say hi because they recognize me. And it's really exciting because they're coming once a month or participating once a month, and like I said, you're always trying to refresh the space and make it exciting, so that knowing that they're coming back on their own too separately, that they're not sick of us yet and they're still excited, and so that the museum they now associate with somewhere that is a safe space for them, an exciting space for them, and a community space for them is really good.
If someone wanted to start a program like this at their own museum, could you give them kind of top 3 things that they should do before they got started?
Yeah, I think you want to plan out some themes, and so that you can have that consistency of like, we're going to do this like once a month. So have like promoting from the beginning. We're going to try like these 4 months. It's going to be this day, like the third Tuesday or whatever it is, so that you can advertise from the beginning, and again, using dads or male caregivers in the advertising. And I would say the food is important. If you're going to do an after sort of school after evening program, especially if you're located in an area like we are, where that's going to be a better use of their time if they can grab food while they're here. And I think it's also an incentive. So I would say arranging food, and there's often like local caterers that will do things like mac and cheese and stuff. So Rural Response handles the food for this, but we've used some of the same caterers for other events we've done, and they're reasonable. So if you can budget that out, and making sure that you're picking things that kids will eat, um, which is like
Mhm.
mac and cheese, sandwiches, like things that pizza that has like no toppings on it, things that kids want to eat. So I would say the food, I would say the consistency, and having a program ready to go so that you can promote it. And I think the other thing is just having the space, the program space, or where you're going to have people, because when you do have a meal, you do have to have somewhere where you can set that up and serve it. Um, but so we often do like a mixture of, we're in like our program space, where we can do painting and get messy and we can eat, and then we always spend part of the time in the galleries, in the exhibits, because they're there to see the museum, whether that's like a guided thing or an activity, or whether it's like a challenge where they have to go out and find things in the galleries. They always spend some time in the space. So yeah, so I think that those would be the main things. I would highly recommend you have food.
Perfect. And then if someone was wanting to start one of these at their museum, how would you have them kind of justify it or make a case for it to someone, their superiors or to their funder or to their county council, for example? What sort of are the big values that you would say are important to get these programs started?
Well, I think you can look at what programs you have and where there's a gap. And if you are doing a parent program or a parent and kid program, are you having like masculine identifying people attending? Is there a gap there? Are you having newcomers attending? Or is there a group that you're like, these people should be here. I see them in my community, but I don't see them at the museum. And then maybe you need to actually invite them directly. And because it seems almost exclusive to be like, oh, we're zeroing in on this micro demographic. But if you're not seeing them, and there's really no reason you shouldn't be seeing them because they are there, then you might need to target them directly. So I think you can make a case based on who are you not seeing. So taking some analysis of the demographics and attendance you are having. And then I think it's important to have like evening programs for local people and to make the case that, like, your local community, the tourists, we get them here. We're in a beautiful lakeside area, but like for the long term of our community identity, that is invented by the stories we tell about ourselves. The museum has a big role to play in that at the municipal level, I think. And so we have to make those connections with our families at different ages intergenerationally. And we have to justify that we're valuable to them, and we see what the community needs. Sometimes the community needs childcare. We should be doing day camps. The community needs after school like activities that aren't maybe sports or maybe are more opportunities for kids and their parents to interact like together instead of apart or dropping off. Then we can provide that. So I think just establishing the gap. I feel like every time I write a grant proposal or do anything, it's like when they used to have the as seen on TV, like like the commercials, they would create what is the problem? Even like the problem is like, aren't knives hard to use? We need a slap chop, and we don't really, but like you have to create aren't the knives hard to use? So what is the problem? What is the gap? What are we not serving or doing? And there's always people that aren't coming through the door. So it's targeting who that is.
That was a very thorough answer.
It rambled on, but
I can see that you're very good at answering questions when people ask them on a sort of a virtual meeting like that. You would be an excellent asset there. So has welcoming this audience changed any more of your museum sort of processes or approaches?
I think it just helps me too, because I don't come from an education background. I come from a museum and public history background. So spending time with kids at different developmental levels, with or without their parents, helps me in the way that we develop our programs. And I think something we started and brought back after the pandemic was like sort of unstructured play days in the winter. Again, getting that local audience to come in the off season when they're looking for something to do that's indoors, and the kind of activities that you can put out for unsupervised, unstructured play throughout the museum. And I think Kids and Dads really helped me figure out what would be work in that space from seeing the different ages interact with their parents. And so I think every time you spend more time with your community, and you also see like what they're interested in, and in a small community, people are like, actually, I'm related to that guy who discovered salt or whatever, and you're like, oh, so there's like a strong interest in this group in that topic, so we should maybe do some more research, pull some more artifacts that have to do with that, and there's a connection there, and they feel invested in that. And so the more time you spend with your people who are at different ages, different demographics in your community, the more you that clicks into place of how you can make connections between them and the collection and the sites.
Excellent. That comes to the end of the questions that we have here on our list. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I think it's been a really great program, and again, it's great to offer like the evening programs so that people can come in when they're not at work, so that you can access your local community. And so it doesn't have to be kids and dads, but for us, it's been really, really gratifying and a great program.
Well, thank you so much, Sinead. I just wanted to share with everybody here on the call that our next webinar coming up will be on Thursday, July 13th. So that's next Thursday. We'll be talking about podcasting for Ontario museums. We put together a panel of kind of digital media experts, some of our museum podcast practitioners from across the province who've been doing it for a very long time, who are going to bring their expertise to us to talk about how you can go from conceptualizing to developing to distributing a podcast, all those steps in and around in between. Coming up, we also want to make sure that you'll receive the recording of this session by email as soon as we get it processed. So you'll send along, and we'll also include the slides and any other resources that we have. And when you leave this webinar, you'll be sent to a survey that will help us plan for any future PD opportunities that we have coming up. Your support of the Ontario Museum Association and your participation in events like this webinar is incredibly valuable and makes us stronger as a sector. And we appreciate each and every one of you. If you are able, we invite you to renew your membership if you are a member. If you're not a member, you can consider joining as a member and as an institution or as an individual. And you can find more about that on our website at our Join Now button. Or if you would like, you can make a donation to the OMA either through our website or through Canada Helps. I'm just going to pop in the chat here with a link to the registration for our upcoming webinar of next week. And I'll give everyone a chance to copy that out of there. And I wanted to say thank you to Sinead for your time this morning, for everybody for joining us. And I want to wish you a great weekend, everybody. And thank you so much. We'll let you stay in touch with all of our social handles and look forward to sending out that recording. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. And we'll talk to you all soon.